Welcome to the Aaron Warner podcast on iCode Media. And today is a fun day because we're taking a deep dive into me. So I'm a little nervous. Sophie has promised me that she's going to be nice, but I've asked her to be honest. And my guess is what we're going to talk about today, if you know me, is not going to be any sort of a surprise. But I think it'll be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to it. And before we jump into all about me, and not all about me in a braggadocious way, but figuring out how I work and how I don't work, Sophie, give us a little background as to who you are.
Yes, absolutely. My name is Sophie Thune. I'm the clinic manager and team lead at Good Life Eye Care in Omaha, Nebraska. So I've been working at Good Life with Dr. Kyle Clutie for almost 5 years now. I was hired on as a technician and was promoted a couple years ago to clinic manager and team lead. So I am certified in the Working Genius model, and right now I am coaching a few practices. I've done some speaking engagements, so we're very passionate about the Working Genius at Good Life. We've used it for probably about 3 years now. I think 3 years ago is when we all took the assessment, and since then just the shared terminology has been super beneficial for us. But ever since I was certified, I've just realized, like, oh my word, there's so much more to this, and it just goes so much deeper. And so yes, very passionate about the model, very excited to be talking with you about it. So thank you for having me.
Perfect. And before we jump in, so those who aren't familiar with the Working Genius model, give us a quick overview of what it is.
Absolutely, yeah. So the Working Genius is a framework that's designed to help everybody understand where they are energized to contribute. So we're all energized to contribute differently. We all have unique giftings and unique ways that we function at our best. We've all experienced this at work. There are some people who are just like really good at kind of jumping into a meeting and bringing energy. I admire those people and I look up to them so much, but that is not me. And so it's like, we all have unique ways where it's like there is work that energizes me and that I feel like I'm just naturally really good at. And there's also work that just drains me like no other. And a lot of times I think that's really ambiguous, and we don't really it's hard to put words to that and to actually understand, apart from like this specific task that I hate, like how do I define that? Just this thing that like I just can't stand. That's what the Working Genius does for me, is so it helps to define the what. For me and everybody on my team, what am I good at? And what do I need to do more of to function at my best and to also contribute meaningfully and to just be fulfilled by the work that I do? So what I think sets the Working Genius apart is that it is more of an efficiency tool than it is a personality assessment. So we're all familiar with personality assessments. I think I love them. I'm really passionate about personality. There are some people who are super cynical about personality tests, and they're like, oh, another one of these. And I think there's room for both of those things. There are places for all that. But I think for whatever category you fall into on that spectrum, I think the Working Genius, it adds something unique because it is simple and practical. It applies directly to work, and it helps you to understand, how do I be more efficient as a person, and as a contributor in my workplace. Burnout isn't always about too much work on your plate. Sometimes it's about too much of the wrong kind of work. And so the Working Genius specifically, for me personally, it's helped me to fight against burnout and to understand, this isn't because there's too much on my plate. It's because sometimes I just need to rebalance what I'm doing and trust, these tasks to other people who are more gifted in a specific type of work. So we'll get into it and it'll make more sense. But broadly, yep. I'm obsessed. It's amazing. So yes.
And we love it. And I've liked this too. I've superficially done personality profiles. So DISC was the easiest for me because I'm pretty simple, straightforward, just get to the point type of a person. So I liked that. I really liked this because we dove into a little bit more. And how I've explained personality profiles isn't a good, bad, or otherwise. It's kind of like if I'm building a football team. Right? You've got somebody who's naturally gifted as a quarterback. You've got somebody who's a really good agile runner who may be a wide receiver or a running back, but you're not going to have them block for you because they're 100 pounds soaking wet and boots on, right? And you've got others who, we all have our strengths on the field, and understanding your strengths helps you build that
Right.
your team the best. And you know what you do well, and you know what you don't do well. You probably shouldn't avoid what you don't do well, but you can certainly be aware of it and work on building it. But reinforcing the things you do well. So the reason I said we're going to dive into me is because I took the assessment. And I don't know if they timed the assessments, but I'm pretty sure that when it said just go with your first instinct, I might have the score for the fastest assessment taker. Because if my job is to just pick an answer, I'm going to pick an answer, right? And we move on. So I've got my electronically here my report.
Amazing. Yes.
And I've gone through and I've highlighted it, and I agree probably with 99% of it. Good. So let's dive into to analyzing me. And before we do, because you work with Kyle, and Kyle's one of my really good friends, he told me that he was going to guess what he thinks that my working geniuses are. So I want to know, coming out of the gate, how close was Kyle to being accurate?
So Kyle, Dr. Clutie, to me, he was half right. He guessed that you had invention and galvanizing. Galvanizing is actually one of your frustrations, so that half was very wrong. But I told him, when I saw your results come through, I told him what they were, and he was like, "Oh, that makes sense. I should have guessed that." So yeah, he's excited.
Well, I think we can talk about that, because part of my job has to be galvanizing.
Yes.
And so I've learned to be a chameleon when I have to be.
Oh, we're gonna get into that. That'll be exciting.
Let's get into this, and
let's get into it.
And then a disclaimer: if my team or my family's listening, like, this is not to be used against me. Right?
Yep. Well, would you like? How about this? I could give kind of a brief overview of all the 6 geniuses, and then we'll dive into your unique pairing and go from there.
Do that.
So the working genius, it defines 6 stages of work, and everybody derives joy and energy from 2 of those stages, and everybody has 2 stages that they are drained and exhausted by. So the ones that you derive joy and energy from, those are called your working geniuses. The ones that exhaust you are your working frustrations. And there are also 2 that fall in the middle, and those would be called your working competencies. You're not particularly like miserable or joyful with them, but you can kind of be cautious where you spend that energy and use those. So the acronym to remember is WIDGET, WIDGET. So those are the 6 working geniuses. And it all starts with the W is wonder. Wonder is the person who identifies the need for improvement or change. So Dr. Werner, you know Dr. Clutie. Dr. Clutie has the genius of wonder. So he is so gifted at speculating and thinking conceptually. He is always thinking about innovation and where can we go next as a practice. And I think as a doctor, that's a very valuable thing for him to have. He is pushing us towards innovation all the time. And organizations really need wonder to avoid stagnation. That's why it's important, because when wonder is underrepresented, we will spend our energy on getting things done, but we're rarely going to stop to discuss what's happening in the industry or in the environment, and we're going to fail to identify serious problems or take advantage of major opportunities. So that's why it's important. Wonder is where the work begins, just with identifying that need and kind of thinking in this big picture realm. And that's where we get into invention. So invention is the next genius. It's the I. Invention continues the work that wonder begun by confirming the importance of that need and generating an idea in response. And what's funny about inventors, people who have the genius of invention, they rarely generate one idea. They have like 5 immediately. They're like, we could do this or this or this. And you're nodding because, you have invention. Yep. That's one of your geniuses. So they're constantly generating ideas. They're so energized by the wonder and this problem, and they're just energized to solve. And so big problem solvers, they're bursting with ideas. When invention is underrepresented, We tend to rely on the same products and services and ideas, and we'll feel very frustrated with our inability to create solutions to frequent problems. We'll kind of be frequently frustrated by the same things because we're just lacking that constant generation of new ideas. After invention comes discernment. Discernment is your quality filter. So these are people who they're very intuitively wired. They kind of will naturally be able to filter through all the ideas and say, this one can go forward. This one we need to stop here and think about, here are some problem spots. Discernment can be hard to understand if you do not have it as a genius because it's a very intuitive process. And because it can often feel like you are putting brakes on progress. Discernment kind of slows the progress down for a second and just says, okay, wait, I see in the long run, here's a problem that we might have with this. And that can be frustrating to people who are like, yeah, let's move this forward. But in the long run, like, we are avoiding problems that could be breaking us down for months in the future, and we're handling them now. And so this is a very important point in the process, is just evaluating and identifying what is workable and what's not. And so when discernment is underrepresented, we're going to fail to move forward with good ideas. We're going to fail to dismiss bad ideas. We're going to constantly pursue solutions that don't really end up working as well as they could, or they just don't work at all. So that's why it's important. But after discernment, that's when the galvanizing comes in. So that's the next genius. The G is galvanizing. These are the people who motivate and excite, and they spur action forward. So they kind of rally the team together. They get everyone together, and they just excel at pushing people past the comfort zone and inspiring them to get started. So they're very interpersonal, emotional, kind of like, here's what we're going to do. And they're just bursting with energy in that way. And they're very, very doing focused. Galvanizers are often the first person to like get an idea out of an email chain and actually get it moving. And so these are the movers. When galvanizing is underrepresented, our team is just going to fail to inspire. At Good Life Eye Care, we lack galvanizing. You might have heard Dr. Clutie talk about this before, because this is our constant, like, deeply felt gap, is just like, if only we had a person who could just like excite us around this idea, because we really have to like rally some form of energy, and we just feel it's not what it could be if there were a person in the room that were gifted in this way. But you learn how to fill those gaps when you can identify that that's what's missing. So following galvanizing is enablement. Enablement is a very supportive genius. These are the people that they respond to galvanizing in the way that galvanizing just needs. The galvanizer really wants a reaction from people, and enablement is like, yes, how can I help? What can I do? So they know how to help, when to help, and they can just flex to whatever the situation calls for. And this just ensures that initiatives don't stall due to lack of support. Like, these are the people who jump in and identify, here's what I can do, here's what this person can do, here's where we can all contribute to the actual implementation of this. And so when enablement is underrepresented, we're just going to fail to champion the most important priorities. We're not going to respond to galvanizing. We're kind of going to start to lose steam at this point. And then after enablement comes tenacity. And these are the people who are energized by just ensuring that a project goes through to completion. They want to make sure that our project has the impact that it's supposed to have, and that it meets the agreed upon standards. Like, they desire, they're detail oriented. They want, all the perfection of the original idea. They want it to meet that potential. They don't necessarily respond to the emotional appeal of the galvanizer quite as much as enablement does. They kind of just respond to this need to see the thing crossed off the list. They love having a list of things to do and just doing the cross off all day, every day. So when tenacity is underrepresented, we're just going to see a failure to complete projects. We're going to be moving on to the next thing before a project has been completed. So those are the 6 geniuses. And when they're broken down, you're just given 2 of those that are geniuses, 2 that are competencies, and 2 that are your frustrations. So Dr. Warner, I have your breakdown in front of me. Your geniuses are invention and discernment. Competencies are tenacity and wonder. And frustrations are galvanizing and enablement. So I'm going to turn this back to you and just ask, how do you feel like those results resonated with you?
I think I was not surprised in the slightest. I think the invention I love doing, I love solving, I love fixing. Right. The biggest argument I have with my wife is that when she's telling me about an issue, I'm already solving it, and as opposed to just listening. So I'm already trying to just get to the point where we're solving the issue.
Yes.
And even at the conference I'm at right now, listening to the discussions, I default to quickly trying to let's figure out a solution to the problem. And so reading this is I was reading it before I came to the conference, and so listening and to the discussions, reminding myself that I've got to slow down before I try to jump to solutions so quickly. And then the discernment I thought was interesting because sometimes things will make sense to me, but it's really hard to explain the why. So when I'm trying to explain it to somebody else on why something is going to work or not going to work, or where the problem is, I can see it clearly, but it's hard to say why because there's not a logical 1 + 1 = 2 sometimes. I just know that it's going to work or know that we're going to have a problem. And so it was interesting how you described it as sometimes tough to see. And sometimes I get frustrated trying to explain that I've been told, hey, your intuition's great. You just have to bring me along. And so that part for me has been challenging. Probably why the whole galvanizing is tough because the rallying and getting everybody excited is not my strength. Let's go. We got something to do. Let's go do it.
Yes, absolutely. And I asked Dr. Clutie, I was like, so, just with the galvanizing, like we were trying to figure out, okay, why was that Dr. Clutie's guess if it's your frustration? And what's funny is like, first of all, just because something is your frustration doesn't mean you're necessarily bad at it. Like you could probably be very good at channeling the galvanizing energy when you need to. And that can be very effective and come off as like super confident and competent. But at the end of the day, you're probably going to feel immensely burnt out because that's just like not something you're energized by at all. But also you're pairing invention and discernment, it comes one right after the other. And so I can see how like when you're coming up with ideas, you already have a read on like which one of these is actually workable and is going to go through. And so you're probably pretty confident in your ability to come up with a solution right then and there. And in that way, I think it can probably come off, this is a hypothesis and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe it comes off sometimes just like, yeah, you're just like, you're ready to go. Let's rally around this thing and just get this idea going. So I could see how that could be interpreted as galvanizing. And also as a practice leader, you have to kind of galvanize in whatever way you're capable. Like that's a lot of your job. And Dr. Clutie, similar, just cannot, like he is not energized by galvanizing either. But he just in his own way kind of always has to be channeling that energy because that's just what's required of you in your job. And he finds a way to do it through, having a process and just holding to, here's what I've established for us and how we're going to work. But it's not a natural gifting. He has to find his way around. How am I going to do my job well and be a good practice leader in the ways that I'm still gifted to just contribute. So it's interesting.
Yeah. As we're talking and I'm thinking, delegation as a leader is super important as well. And so I think that my delegation probably is seen by Kyle as galvanizing, right? Trying to bring more people along. When my intent is to get the work done, and now we're assigning roles as who's doing the work. He could be seeing that as, oh, he's trying to bring everybody along to, together. Yes. And so it's, I think there's overlaps in all of these a little bit. And certainly, in different roles, I've got to wear different hats, even if we don't want to. Kind of like doing the dishes and taking out the trash. You do it whether you want to or not.
Yes.
It's interesting. So, but yes. Just being a natural, born, super social, trying to rally the troops, get everybody excited over something is is not my strength. And so I've learned I have to find people, either in my life that can do that so I don't have to.
Yes, absolutely. And how do you feel like, so as a doctor and a practice leader, invention and discernment, where do you see those play out at work? Just in patient care or in leading a team?
In leading a team, I think that there's good and bad, and I think all of these have their like anything else, right? You can add just enough salt to make your food taste good, and too much to make it bad. I'm never happy with status quo, and so I'm always looking at changing and growth, and what can we do differently, and how can we be innovative, which sounds really cool and sexy until you work for me, and then nothing is ever consistent. Because I'm gonna ask constantly. In fact, that's one of the first things that the team warns a new hire is, like, he's gonna ask you why you did something, not because he's trying to pick up on you, but he just wants to understand why these trays are in this cabinet. Like, is there a good reason for it? It's just the way his brain works. He's constantly trying to break something, either to make sure it's working properly or to improve it. And
Yeah,
but that can come across as either being critical or
sure.
or just never being happy because you're always trying to do something better. And then it also is tough because was quick to jump to just, here's the solution we're going to do, and that stifles growth in others. And so I've had to rein that back in to really help others lead, and so to help myself with that, part of my goals turned into developing other people. And so I'm still being very proactive in solving the problem of, I'm going to help you develop, not that it's a problem, but I'm going to help you develop. And by doing that, I'm not going to come up with the answer. I'm going to help you come up with the answer.
Yes, that's amazing. So we talked about galvanizing already, but in the realm of frustrations, you also have enablement as a frustration. Do you see that show up at work?
The Myopia Collective. CooperVision and the AOA have partnered in a groundbreaking initiative to change the way optometrists in the U.S. treat children with myopia. The purpose of the Myopia Collective is to rally the profession of optometry and its allies to interrupt the status quo and elevate the new standard of care for children with myopia. Every individual is encouraged to become a member of the collective. By joining, you commit to taking action to help slow the progression of myopia in children. You'll receive updates and information about the collective and its work in the fight against myopia, gain access to educational opportunities and resources offered by the collective, and hear from change agents, the ambassador optometrists selected to serve as advocates for community and policy change that facilitates the mission of the collective. Scan the QR code or click on the link in the show notes to join the collective today. In the past, our focus revolved around prescribing MacuHealth or MacuHealth Plus to patients at risk of macular degeneration, while also recommending it to collegiate and professional athletes for enhanced contrast sensitivity in sports performance. However, this year's introduction of the Life Meter has been a game changer. The Life Meter revealed a concerning truth. Many of my patients have alarmingly low skin carotenoid levels, indicating potential deficiencies in essential body tissues like the retina and brain. Supported by over 30 peer-reviewed publications, Life Meter's accuracy, consistency, and effectiveness has been demonstrated across 2,000 subjects with diverse backgrounds. With this newfound insight, I can now have meaningful conversations about carotenoid levels with all of my patients, even those who may seem outwardly healthy. To learn more about this empowering technology, feel free to contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. Together, let's optimize patient care and elevate their well-being. I think so. Let me go back, and I think it comes up when I highly value in myself just figure out how to do it attitude. And so if somebody needs extra support, it's hard for me to always be proactive in giving that support and anticipating what they might need with that support. If they ask for it, I'm more than happy to help because that's part of solving the problem.
Yes.
But anticipating that they may need some additional support in one area or another is tough because I typically don't need to ask. I take the initiative to figure it out on my own and problem solve it on my own. And so I think that's where I struggle with the enabling side is,
Absolutely.
anticipating their needs, or being patient enough to listen through the challenges.
Yes, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And you know what's funny is this is Dr. Clutie's theory, because a lot of our staff fall in kind of the enablement tenacity side of things, and he's, we're coaching a few practices, and he's just seeing actually a lot of people who work in optometry just on the staff teams fall in kind of the enablement and tenacity. Like we see so many of that pairing because that is a lot of what the work requires. But I'm curious, like looking at this model, do you feel like you see one genius really well represented on your team?
No, and I think that's because while we haven't done Working Genius, we did a lot with DISC, and we were very intentional of having all the different personalities under DISC represented and put into different roles. And so I'm really curious because I know we're going to do this with my leadership team. So my office manager, for example, if we're looking at DISC, her personality is opposite of mine by design, and it created a ton of conflict at first because we didn't know how to communicate with each other. But once we did, I know that I run too fast. I know that I pick up and go and I run off of intuition. And then I'm also not afraid of making mistakes because the best way to fix a bad decision is just make another decision that's better. Where she is much more methodical and analytical and wants to go slow and plan. And so very yin and yang, we overlap with each other. And so I think that by design, we've tried to cover all the bases. I think the discernment and intervention is probably the least represented because you can't have too many people just constantly trying to run around and fix things. So I think that's the lowest amount that we've got. And I would think that, like you guys have found, that enablement and tenacity is probably our highest. We've got quite a few galvanizing too. We have a lot of very social, super happy, exciting people. So birthdays around the office are always a good time. I don't think we have a ton of wonder, but that's probably because it's not we're not a blue sky type of business. It's we know what we're doing. There's not a whole lot of let's try to figure out what can happen, what's available. We know it's available.
It's amazing. I'm glad you have galvanizing. I'm a little envious, and I know Dr. Clutie will be too when I tell him.
Well, it's funny because it's envious, but that's my least favorite. And they're like, you gotta come, it's a party, and here's the balloons, and here's the let's get through.
Yeah.
Happy birthday to you. Blow out the candles. Let's move on. We got stuff to do. And so it's I try to avoid it when it's my birthday. They end up figuring out when to have the little party.
They always find a way.
They always find a way. But I appreciate it because they love it. But yeah, that's my least favorite time is when we're just slowing down to celebrate something.
Yes.
Sounds really dumb, and I'm gonna get hate mail from this. But I just, in my own world, I don't celebrate my own birthday. I don't, I don't make a big deal of it. It's just another day of the week.
My word. It's out there, everybody. Send Dr. Warner a message on his birthday. Let's make it all a big deal. That's hilarious. Competency-wise, Dr. Warner, do you feel like you spend much of your work life leveraging the tenacity wonder realm? Because you kind of already alluded to, you're naturally, and that's your invention as well, you're naturally going to be thinking about innovation. And you're a goer, you're a doer, you're pushing things past the finish line. So I feel like you've already kind of said you're probably leaning into those a tiny bit, at least.
Tiny bit. The wonder one was interesting for me. And so I went through and read it. I'm curious if I'm understanding it right. I think the difference between wonder and invention for me is the doing aspect. So the wonder, I read it and understood it to just let's explore possibilities. Let's explore the what ifs. Let's think if we were going to buy a new house. So let's roll through Zillow and just pretend that we're going to walk through these houses, or maybe even go walk through them. And to me, that drives me nuts because it's not an action that's happening. It's not in the realm of possibility right now. It's just kind of fun and play. And so that's why I think I struggle a little bit with the wonder, because, let's just think about what could possibly happen. And the inventions is more of the let's solve and do and fix something right now. And so if we want to buy a house, like, let's sit down, let's run the math, let's, save, let's create a plan, let's do this, and here's what we're doing. Whereas the wonder is the let's go and walk through a bunch of $10 million houses knowing there's no way we'll ever afford them, but it's just kind of fun. And
Yes.
maybe a bad example, but that's kind of why I think I do well with one and not the other.
Yes. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, that was where Dr. Clutie was like, this is why I need more people like Aaron Warner in my life, is because I can just bring all my in the clouds thinking, and he's just like, here are 5 ideas for you. And that's also why Dr. Clutie loves Chat GPT, is because he can just, give me an idea with all this. Like, it's a great tool. But I might read, I have your pairing. So basically each unique pairing of geniuses has a name. Yours, invention and discernment, it's called the discriminating ideator. I'm just going to read this little description because I find it to be very interesting. It says, people with this pairing get real energy and joy from using their intuition and instinctive ability to come up with new ideas from scratch, and they are good at using integrative thinking and pattern recognition rather than data and expertise. As a result, they are particularly effective in solving problems and coming up with workable, practical solutions with a particularly high level of success. They can sometimes appear impatient and overconfident when they receive pushback around their ideas, and they often lose interest after the initial phase of invention is over. That last part, do you feel like that's accurate, the losing interest?
Yeah, I highlighted that whole last sentence when it said they can sometimes appear impatient and overconfident. It's but yeah, I definitely lose patience. I joke that I'm the king of 80% because I can get the project to the 80% mark done.
Yeah.
Just finishing that last 20% is so boring and tedious that it's like I've already moved on to the the next thing. And which means I've got lots of rooms in my house that are almost fully painted, and but knowing that it's locking in and making sure that last 20% gets done is part of that, knowing your weaknesses, knowing what you have to really focus on and actively put energy behind, because it's not going to come natural.
Yes, that is amazing. Do you have your breakdown in front of you? Does it tell you about crave and crushed by? Did you read that portion of it? It's probably right under the unique pairing part at the bottom.
I do not have one. It goes straight into the working genius pairings and then applying the working genius.
Okay. So let me just look into this, because what I have found to be super helpful is they tell you for each genius, there's kind of, they crave this and they're crushed by this, and this is kind of what they need in response to this genius. So for invention, you crave freedom. Inventors really want the freedom to just think and ideate, and they are crushed by constraint. So having to kind of fit in this little box, that is particularly crushing for them. And then with the discernment, you crave trust. You want people to trust your instincts, and then you're crushed by prove it. That phrase of like, give me the data. That's just, I have discernment, and that's, same for me. It's just, I don't have an answer for that. I just need trust. So where do you see that play out? Freedom and trust are the two things you need in response to your pairing.
Well, the podcast, I think, is a perfect example. I've had a couple of guests I've talked to who are great people, and I invited them to be guests on the podcast. And one individual actually sent me 12 pages fully scripted of what he was going to say and what I was going to say, built-in jokes and everything. And I called them back and I said, I love you, but I can't do this. Like there is absolutely no way that I can do this. I'm overwhelmed already right now. And because quite frankly, we start by saying, hey, let's kind of talk about this, but wherever the conversation goes is where it's going to go. I have no agenda on the pod. I have no written notes. I have no ideas. And this individual is exactly opposite. The idea of free flow just terrified him. And so we had to work together to find a compromise, and it ended up being a fantastic discussion. I'm not going to say which one it was, but it was a lot of work to get that one done, because he needed the organization and the know-how, and he played off the script perfectly. Whereas that would have crushed the whole value that I believe that I bring, in just having a free flowing conversation. So that one was, it really highlighted to me. At the same time, when I'm going to speak in front of a group, or when I was on stage at the Vision Source Exchange, or, I've got a couple of bullet points, but I don't rehearse. It's just, whatever's kind of flowing in the moment just flows, because when I do try to memorize a script or whatnot, it comes out poorly. And then the trust I've learned is a tough one, because just trust me, like I've worked it out. Just trust me. I've got a proven track record. It just works. But I know that that's hard for a lot of other people to do. And so trying to find how much I need to share to get other people to let me say, trust me. And, but on the flip side, when I've talked with my teams, let's say at the office, they want to do something. Well, knowing that I just trust you, don't come to me with tons and tons and tons and tons of data. Just, I'm going to give you the trust. And so I don't need you to continually prove to me that something's going to work. I already said, okay, the conversation's over. Wow. Go do it. Don't keep trying to reiterate and sell me your point. We're good. Right. So I think that the things that I need and like the cravings I have, I expect that in other people naturally too. So I try to give it back to them. I try to give them the freedom of, why are you asking me if you can move the coffee machine from one spot? Just do it. Right. I trust you. Just do it. It was a question I just got during the, while we were discussing. But I can see where others would want to make sure, because they maybe need to feel that security. They've worked on the justifications and want to be able to share it. And so knowing that what I need helps my team ask appropriately, so they can get what they want by giving me my cravings.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yes. That's so good. So my last question, because I had a team member make a remark in a team meeting a couple weeks ago, and they were noticing how their energy changes throughout the day, and how they are particularly energized by this aspect of their working genius in the morning, and in the afternoon they're leaning more towards this way. I'm curious if you feel this way, because I think that's common, especially with the genius of invention. Is I've seen, like, I really love waking up in the morning and just writing, or like, I don't know. I've seen that a lot with that genius of just like, I've identified a time of day when I am most at my peak with this genius. And that is a very niche question. You might not have an answer for it, but I just asked it. So
I've never thought of it, but I definitely will feel times where I'm creative and just, I kind of always wrote it off as just an ADD characteristic, whether I've never been diagnosed, but but I'll find times when I'm just hyper effective and hyper productive, and I can get a lot done. And other times where it's a little bit harder to kind of get into that mindset. And so I don't like a very structured schedule. I like a very free flowing schedule, and I'll get a week's worth of done sometimes in 3 days as opposed to a full week. But some of it might be at 2:00 in the morning. Some of it might be, all at once. Like I don't like a rigid schedule. I'm jealous of people like Kyle that can get up and have a set schedule. I get up and do what I feel like doing
on steroids.
when I do it.
I don't get it.
But I do see that there's times when I'm more energized by that kind of activity. I'll have to pay attention to see if there's a time of day or really an ebb and flow.
Yeah.
But
I feel like maybe it depends on the day. Yeah. But I don't know. There are some people who are like, every day, this is just what I've realized about myself, is like, I just need to, really just hone in on this. And I'm with you. I'm kind of like, I've seen it come and go. And sometimes I just hit a point where I'm like, yes, I'm just doing so much. And then other times it's like my head's in the clouds. So yeah, it's unique.
What I have found is that I've learned that when I am feeling low, the different people to tap into that can help get me to where I need to go. And I think that would kind of be, and I don't have any of the working genius analysis for them or the language to look at, but I was stuck with an idea. I got an idea on identity. We're reading, the next book is, why am I drawing a blank? How the Great Fall by Jim Collins. And I knew I had an idea in my head and I couldn't figure out how to go. I kind of hit a roadblock, and I called Chris Wolf, and he and I had about an hour-long discussion. And if you were listening to it, we went in every which way it could go, but by the end, it had helped open up that roadblock. And I've got that often with Kyle and Brianna and our text change. And there's a couple other people I know that would, depending on where I'm at, maybe I'm just kind of in a lull, or I'm super productive and I need that energy to keep going, who to tap into, because they bring something different to the table. Like I love Kyle's, wondering mind and his ability to slow down and put together that newsletter, which is super great and fantastic. I would never have the patience to do so. And nor would I be able to make some of the connections that he's made, because he's, slows and his mind thinks differently. Where I like to take it now I can hit the ground running because I've got, action steps that I pulled from it.
Right. Yes, that is so good. And I think, self-awareness is just like, that's just the beginning of great leadership. And so like knowing where you are uniquely wired, and then having people and knowing who are my people, who am I going to go to for this, and who's going to, when do I need to call Chris Wolf? It's like, that's an important thing, is like, there are other people who are going to be energized by things that you're just not. And so that's where I think, I don't know, this model it gives me so much specificity to add that language too, of just identifying, if I have an inventor on staff, that's one of my frustrations. So when I'm just like, I need to know what to bring to this team meeting, and for us to like talk about, like, I've noticed we're having problems with this, but that's like block beyond that. Can you just give me 5 things you feel like you've noticed going on that we should talk about as a team? And it's like, boom. It's just so helpful to know this about yourself and about other people. I think it frees us from the guilt of just like, I will never be everything that this person was in my position. I've had, I think before I knew my working geniuses, I had severe guilt for probably about a year in leading team meetings, because we had a galvanizer on staff who was leading those meetings before I did, and she was so energetic all the time and just brought this fantastic energy. It was amazing. And then I'm standing up here trying to, it's just not the same. And I just felt so much guilt of like, why can I not do my job well? And that's not what it was. It was just like, I just am not gifted in that way. And so how can I use my geniuses to still do this and do it well and do it in a way that energizes me? And then it frees us from judgment too, of like, how dare this person be so bad at this one thing, when that's, when like, okay, this is my genius and this is actually the staff person's frustration. You can extend so much grace just knowing like, okay, that's how I feel about, galvanizing. I get it. And so maybe I can just step in and offer my gift to help them, instead of sitting back here and being like, that's just me admitting natural tendencies. And I think that's where I've noticed this, like, in our practice, just transform our dynamic interpersonally, is just helping free us from the guilt and the judgment that can come from just the ambiguity of all of that. So love the specificity of the model. Yeah.
Yep. And it helps it helps with the imposter syndrome. Right? It helps with and understanding your strength. And I really think that to be the best individuals, professionally, personally, whatever it is, we just have to know ourselves, and we have to understand our identity and be comfortable with it. And realize that, we're like a cake. There's lots of different ingredients that go into us. So it's not always just one or the other, but cakes tend to be sweet or, and whatnot. And so there's overriding tendencies, but understanding just the makeup of who you are and what makes you tick. Because then as a leader, you can tap, or even just as a part of a team, you can tap into others who are better, have that strength. So if you need, something done, a party planned, I'm not your guy, right? You need something fixed, right? You know who to call. But
Yep.
so I don't plan parties. I'll go to those who do, and it takes that off my plate, and it energizes them. And so we're passing the energy to where it's best utilized. I've also found that, and I'm curious, so I want to ask you guys if you've gotten to the point where you try to apply this to patients, so guessing what type of working genius they are, because when you, and we did this a little bit with DISC, when we could see the kind of personality that patient was, we could cater the experience a little bit to them. So if somebody was much more analytical, giving them a full breakdown of their managed vision care benefits and line by line item. If somebody was much more dominant, right, they don't even want to know half the time how much it is. They're just, can I pay and get out of here? And when do I come back and pick up my glasses? Right?
Absolutely.
It's catering that experience to them and knowing that they're different than you, because sometimes, I know what I want, but if I provide what Aaron Werner wants, Sophie's not going to be happy all the time, and vice versa.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like we see that a lot kind of on the, I always wonder, like Dr. Clutie in the exam room, he probably experiences some of that. I think we experience it more on the back end of the appointment. You're walking a patient into the optical, and it's like there are some patients who they want all the help. They want the entire staff in there affirming them, like, and then there are some patients who you ask, like, do you want help today? And they just want to be alone and look at, and then as you said, like you walk them through copays, they want to know everything itemized, or there are some who just give me the number, I'll pay, And so, it is cool. I see myself with working genius, and I mean, Enneagram is another model that we've used here. And you almost just develop this unconscious reflex where you meet a person and you're just typing them, but it's like this little just thing in the back of your mind that it's just like, I wonder, but how could I know? I don't want to make assumptions, but it's like I'm always guessing back here. Like,
we do it all the time. We can't not do it now that we're doctors, right? And what you're trained in, you kind of analyze, and so you figure it out, and it's a good thing. It's you're not manipulating people. You're just understanding situations and who they are, and you're practicing a skill. So as we wrap up, I'm curious how you went on this adventure, because you are now certified, right? You give the test, you work with teams, you coach them, which is pretty cool. So what is, what is just that process? Because I doubt it's, jump online, watch a 5-minute video, take a 10-question test, and you're good. But why did you, want to do it? What is the process that it took for you to get to that level of certification? And then, what are the benefits that you're seeing of teams that are reaching out to you saying, hey, help us understand us?
Yeah, great question. It all started with us taking the Working Genius assessment a couple years ago. Again, I mean, we've been using it for several years, and it was intriguing to me. We've used it so much and used that shared terminology and just benefited from knowing where every one of us is gifted. That was where the interest started, and then it was me and Dr. Clutie and another gal on staff. It was last year at a conference. We did a presentation on practice culture, and we used the Working Genius. And we got so much interest at that conference, because it's just something that, like, I don't think people talk about very much, especially, in optometry. There is so much to talk about all the time. There are so many developments being made. But when do we stop to think about culture and to talk about it in such a giant meeting as this huge conference? And so, we got enough interest there that we started to think, okay, like, what if we started extending this model to people and like offering training in this model? And that's where, certification, I would like to know the model front, back, left, and right before I try to train people in it. And so I was certified towards the end of 2024, and that was a 2-day process where you're basically in a chat room. You're kind of on a Zoom call all day. It's one of those, you're being trained by these very high level certified folks. We had like 3 trainers on there and just people from all across the country getting certified in the Working Genius. So after being trained and getting certified, now I am working with Dr. Clutie. We have a 90-day program that we're currently working on with a few practices. So we're training them through improving practice culture. It's called the Practice Culture Builder. So we're taking them through like, okay, how do you identify mission and values as a business? And then how do you use Working Genius and Enneagram to help add specificity to what is my staff good at? And also, why do they do what they do? What's motivating each of them as a person? And some of that language can, it sounds a little mushy when I say it like that, but just knowing your people, having that self-awareness, but also just like that awareness of who is actually working with me, it really does transform your culture. And so this 90-day program, again, right now we're taking a couple practices through it, but we're officially launching it on July 1st. Right now, I think we have 5 slots left. So I can give you the website information so people have access to that. But we do offer it's coaching directly from me and Dr. Clutie in these models, and just helping personalize the mission and values of a business, and also just looking at you and your staff and the results in your Working Genius assessment, and just working through that with you, talking through like, where do you see this playing out, and how can you leverage the people that are currently in your business to do their best work so that everybody's fulfilled and you're living into your potential as people and also as a company, as a business. So loving it. Yeah.
No, I absolutely love that. And I love my sports metaphors. Every professional team I've seen, and we get now to watch the behind the scenes on the Netflix shows, whether it's, Formula One or football teams and, soccer teams with Wrexham and whatnot. But there's a lot of team development and understanding each other, understanding the players and the strengths so you can leverage them appropriately. And I think that for whatever reason, small business sometimes misses that. We like to invest in our technology. We like to invest in that type of aspect, but investing in who we are as a team really makes a huge difference. I think it's as simple as, 1, improving communication, but 2, a good experience is when expectations are met. And if I've got cravings because of who I am as a Working Genius, if I get those cravings, I'm now enjoying where I work because the craving monster is getting fed. And if I'm not getting that craving monster getting fed, well, I don't like my job. And that's where a lot of times burnout comes from. And it's not the job, it's that an unmet monster, an unrealized monster wasn't getting fed appropriately. So once we understand what it is and understand, the rest of our team's monsters and their strengths and weaknesses, we can feed appropriately, and it becomes a better work environment. It becomes easier to communicate with each other. It becomes easier to disagree with each other. And at the end, patients, if you're in healthcare, customers, if you're, elsewhere, they can feel that difference, and they want to be in a place that you want to be. They don't want to be in a place that you don't want to be in. And so, I think that the investment is absolutely well worth it. I appreciate, you taking time to do this with me, and then we'll talk about my team at a later date and how we all work together. But yes. I'll definitely be sharing this with them though, so they understand, what makes up this crazy guy that they.
I'm so excited to talk about it. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. And we'll put links down in the show notes to tell your resources, so that anybody wants to reach out and find out more, they will be able to. So, okay. Appreciate the time.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.